Immersion mining. Bitcoin produces over $20 million per day in new coins, newly minted Bitcoins. And immersion mining has been absolutely just sweeping the Bitcoin mining industry as it's noiseless, it's more efficient, and it's an advanced cooling method that allows Bitcoin miners to overclock their Bitcoin miners further. So basically, you're mining more Bitcoins, you're earning more money, and you are even lowering your electricity bill while you do it. My name is Vosk, you're on the VoskCoin YouTube channel. Today we're going to be doing an overview of immersion mining, and most notably, immersion mining solutions. Companies that make small scale as well as large scale immersion mining, well, I'll say it again, solutions. A few years ago, to be honest, immersion mining was just simply going to be completely out of touch for small scale miners and a completely custom solution for large scale miners, which is why very many never went that direction. But there's something interesting. Bitcoin mining faces a lot of scrutiny from a lot of different angles, right? Activists that don't know what they're talking about, governments that don't know what they're talking about, and just simply people that don't know what they're talking about. But how could you really just skirt right around that? Well, you could move a Bitcoin mining farm from being air-cooled, where it's going to have a big hum, because at the end of the day, you're moving a lot of air, to an immersion farm. Immersion farms are so discreet. They're basically silent. Do you want to start Bitcoin mining in a neighborhood and you've got an HOA and you can't really drop a loud mining shed in your backyard? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a solution for you. It's called immersion mining. Do you want to Bitcoin mine in your home, but you don't want to hear that wah of the fans? Well, then immersion mining might be for you, but it's not all pros. There are some cons. So let's start running through this stuff. Recently, we toured a Bitcoin mining farm that was entirely an immersion mining solution. DCX was the manufacturer of those. They're utilizing these immersion racks. In the Akil Dennis mining farm tour video, I really recommend you watch this mining farm tour. A mining farm tour is a term we coined several years ago when we launched our Deeper in the Mines video series, where basically I get out there and I tour mining farms because it's really cool, and I take a video and share it with you all. And oftentimes they're hard to get access to and things like that, and we had the fortunate opportunity to do that, but why just be spoiled myself and look at it when I can record it and share it with you all here? So the point being though, one, you should watch that video. I'll drop a link down out below. And if you're watching this right after this video came out, it'll actually be out in a couple of days. So just subscribe and you'll see it pop up. Make sure to turn notifications on. However, the keynote here is you'll see that they have the older generation of these enclosures here. So you can get just an enclosure, which is what I just got. Right, so I have just one enclosure from DCX. Don't think this video is just fixated on DCX. We've got a ton of things to run through, but coming hot off of a DCX basically mining farm tour, and then also turning around and getting a DCX mining enclosure, I'm pretty excited. And well, we've got a lot of footage on that stuff. But basically, depending on the setup here, you can stick about 8 Antminer S19s in there. There's the Pro 9 and the Pro 10 immersion racks. I wish there was more documentation on their site. To put it into perspective, they're not small scale. They're pretty big scale. I mean, you look at just this picture. That's a decent size. But understand that major mining farms build out at huge scale and capacity. They've even pioneered a solution where they just have a straight up mining container. Oh, so you're a big boy, you got a lot of funds? Well, maybe something like this will be the right solution for you. For me personally, I'm a little bit smaller scale than that, which is why I find their home immersion mining solutions so interesting. You want to earn passive income mining cryptocurrencies?
Roger, roger.
I thought so. Me too. But really the first step is actually getting one of those mining rigs. That's where Coin Mining Central comes into play. They've been helping us source miners for years now. And you can save money on your order by punching in the code VoskCoin. Use our link down in the video description below. So this kind of starts small and then I'll go up from there. So they have something they call the BitPod. Basically, think of it as you slap a miner in there, right? And then they have the Pro 9 immersion mining enclosure and rack system. So the way their terminology works is this is an enclosure. And a rack system would be this. This is a rack. 1, 2, 3 on a rack like that. That's a rack system. A rack is just simply 3 of these. But there are some differences. So if you have something very small, for example, like just this BitPod, then something like the ICP-15 may be a good dry cooler for you. I have the ICP-40, which is a much bigger, and it's much more imposing in person, dry cooler. A dry cooler and immersion mining, think of it like a radiator. And let's take a step back for a second and really get back to the basics. Immersion mining is not hydro mining. It's not water-cooled mining. It's liquid-cooled mining, but it's this dielectric fluid. This is not water. Think of it more like oil. Basically, a dry cooler is essentially a radiator. I'm a car guy, so I like to break it down like that. A radiator is air cooling. It has a hot side and a cold side, and basically a bunch of fans pushing air through it. Okay, hot stuff comes in, gets cooled down, goes out the other side, and it's much cooler. You have a closed loop system, and it just goes around and around and around and around and around and around. I feel like I'm on freaking Looney Tunes, okay? But that's what we're dealing with. If you look at this immersion mining solution that I've received, it's about $10,000. You'll see, as we run through these different setups, that these companies deploy small and absolutely huge scale dry cooler solutions. This is a dry cooler that would be appropriate for about 8 ant miners in one of their enclosures. If you wanted to run a rack, you would need 3 of these instead of using a ton of these. For example, at Akil's mining farm that we toured with Dennis, the mining farm operator, then you would basically have, this is the size of a semi truck, and I'm not exaggerating. This is, here's a quick, preview of that. This is a semi truck, and this is basically a just absolutely freaking massive dry cooler. And that would be needed to cool a setup like this. So you basically have a semi truck of immersion mining, and you have a semi truck worth of cooling associated with it. You don't always have to skip go and go straight to jail and not collect 200. There are smaller scale, medium scale, if you will, solutions that they offer. They seem to have something for every size. For example, you see these units. They would be more probably the size of like a smart car as opposed to a semi-truck. If DCX interests you, make sure to subscribe to the VoskCoin YouTube channel as I work on deploying my own small scale DCX immersion mining setup. And obviously the mining farm tour where we ended up touring an immersion farm that I later found out was simply a DCX, entirely product-based immersion mining farm. There's a company that has solutions that you'll find pretty similar to DCX. That's going to be BiXBiT. And you may remember BiXBiT if you're a longtime subscriber of the channel. We actually talked about their firmware, I think it was back in 2019, 2018. They got that T-Mobile magenta color. But they're not just known for software solutions. They have been working on immersion mining solutions for a very long time. They've created their own container solution that they're very proud of. But what more people will find more interesting that they offer is going to be their smaller scale solutions. There's the cell. Something comparable to the cell would be like the enclosure that we just looked at from DCX. They're not the same. I'm not saying they're the same. I'm not saying one's better or one's worse. I haven't gotten my hands on both. I can tell you that the DCX enclosure is incredibly impressive in person. The build quality, the finish, it's there. It's nice. And seeing their newer product versus the previous generation, it's just clearly gone up in quality. And that's very cool to see. But to bring it back to BiXBiT, what interests me, right, we have the cell solution. This can be deployed on single phase or 3-phase electricity, which, keep in mind, the bigger your deployment, the more likely you're just going to simply need 415 voltage, 3-phase industrial electricity. They quickly boast that you'll get a 40% hash rate increase, 100% smart heat utilization, which basically I believe means you could just like redirect this anywhere you want in your house, say like in the winter, and get free heat. That it will increase your equipment lifespan by 200%, 100% reduction in noise and dust, and a 30% reduction in your power consumption. These are things not necessarily unique to their setup, but it's really just a pitch on immersion mining. But they have an immersion mining solution that would help you achieve that. What's interesting about the cell is that they have a tap water cooling solution and then a dry cooling tower solution. I'm not really interested in bringing water into the mix, something that could fry my operation. So dry cooling is definitely what interests me, and dry cooling on this would be like the radiator concept that we just looked at. Pricing on the BiXBiT cell, when you do it the small, cheaper way, it's going to come in under $3,000, right? But that's basically $1,000 per miner to do any form of immersion liquid cooling. So cooling tower bumps that price up a good bit. Then you go to a bigger tank that can fit that. You're basically going $1,000 per miner for immersion cooling, a la carte, small scale here, right? And then $1,500 into the dry cooler, and you're still going to either need to install this yourself or hire a contractor. Pricing on that is definitely going to vary. If you have WhatsMiners, they have a lot of supports and documentation and firmware around WhatsMiners. I'm not really a WhatsMiner guy. I mainly mine Bitcoin with S19s. And while this has been fixated on Bitcoin immersion mining, this of course can be replaced with GPUs, FPGAs, or altcoin mining rigs like Dogecoin ant miners and everything else. I mean, if the form factor is there, you can do the exact same thing. It's not like you need a specific dielectric fluid for different miners. So the other thing they have is called the rack. The rack is just going to be a bunch of these slapped on top of each other. Notably, we can see 4 here. So ideally, you're looking at 24 S19s, and then you slap on a dry cooling tower. And at a glance, it's very similar to the DCX solution. You can, of course, contact them and ask for a better rate and things like that, but their, a la carte off the site price is going to be $30,000. Looking at this price point, I would say that it's comparable to the DCX deployments of a similar size. These build-outs are supposed to last for a long time. So even if you move on to different equipment, you will still have the immersion mining infrastructure. Something to think about. And if you're wild, if you're balling without a budget, then maybe a 20-foot or 40-foot mining container is for you. One thing I am very sure of though is I'm happy to see more and more immersion mining solutions popping up. So enter FogHashing. So they were at Mining Disrupt this year. Your boy wasn't. I'll probably go next year finally. I've been bogged down. But you can see they've got a dry cooler. At a glance, their dry cooler looks a lot like DCX. And this is pulled from Hobbyists video walking through Mining Disrupt. You can see another enclosure there, and we'll go forward and we can see into the little enclosure here, and simple, effective, nice. We can see that's a C2, I think, a model. There's been a couple people I've talked to in the VoskCoin Discord server, which is the best Discord server for mining and the original Discord server for mining. Shameless, brag, plug, flex, whatever. I'm proud. We got the best community in the game. So let's see what FogHashing has. A C1 or C1 Ultra supports a whopping 1 miner. There's the C2, 2 miners, and then there's the C6. Okay. And so, at a glance, this is pretty easy to digest. We see some clear price options here as well. You're going to need coolant no matter what you do. And I would say at a glance, if they have a coolant option, just go with that manufacturer. You use their coolant, one less thing to complain or fight about if something's not working exactly how you want it to be. So $1,400, again, that gets towards that $1,000 price point to move one rig to immersion mining. We see the C2, and this is supposed to be able to house 2 miners, right? And for some reason, don't offer this one with coolant, and the price is slashed. Seems like they're moving away from that. Then we got a coming soon page. So I guess maybe they're moving away from the C2 and moving towards the C6. I'm not super up to date on whatever the hell they're doing. I just know that some people have reported a good experience with their products. They've seen in person, they look nice, and I'll probably order one up to just check it out. When we look at their other solutions, we see the BC series. So what's that? Large scale mining immersion containers, huge fog hashing. I mean, God, that looks cool. Imagine like if you made that, like how proud you'd be. That'd be just a fun one. So we can see containers. BC 40, 20, 10. It's going to be 40, 20, 10-foot container. How much gear you can deploy in that. I mean, I personally think it'd be fun with my mining farm setup that I'm building out to eventually, buy a container that's suited for a megawatt, slap a megawatt of juice to it, and then start plugging miners in there and, just hitting the blockchain. I skipped Go again, and I went straight to BC. So let's talk about this one. This is good medium scale. I think this is like a more realistic deployment of a mining farm for an average person, right? 120 kilowatts. And let's put that into perspective. That's going to be 24 current generation ANT miners, S19, etc., S21 soon, right? So we've got single loop here. We've got a big dry cooler. At a glance, looking at that, somewhere between like a smart car, Miata, right? A small car. And then you got this big boy. So the dry cooler is doubling in capacity here. And then you're just slapping another immersion row right on top. But this is, as far as immersion goes, like this seems like a simple digestible setup. And you can just keep running and running and running and running and running and running. But this definitely looks like a semi-truck level deployment for a 1 megawatt farm, which would be comparable to the DCX mining farm that we toured and mentioned earlier. Either way, they have custom solutions. So if they're piquing your fancy, you should definitely consider reaching out to them. Let's run through this one because I think this one's pretty interesting. We see a dry cooler, 2 fan, pretty big size. We see a pretty big enclosure here. Okay, so what can this thing do? The good news, it operates on 3-phase as well as single phase. One thing to very seriously note is you really need to understand and know your electricity phase and what's possible as you consider immersion, because there are many immersion mining setups that do not support single phase. So you may think you got your plan and your solution, but if it does not work on, say, single phase, well, then your problem is no longer solved. And they do have customized solutions for What's miners. Again, What's miners are very popular in major Bitcoin mining farms, but on a smaller scale, many people often find themselves dealing with ANT miners. ANT miners are also much easier to order at a good price in smaller quantities. I do think out of the 3 solutions we've looked at so far that they have the most digestible solutions and website. I do appreciate that. The concept of immersion mining, if you are handy, is something you could definitely solve yourself. At the end of the day, you have a metal tank, and what this is a custom, someone made this and they're trying to sell it on eBay. But you have a tank, you have fluid, then you need a pipe, a pump, a radiator cooler. I mean, this just looks like an unbranded dry cooler, big ass radiator. You run your fluid through this, you have the hot side, the cold side, and then it comes back in and you're immersion mining. So if you want to embark on a big, exciting project, well, here is definitely an option for you. Or you could head over to this guy's eBay listing. You look at the price point, it's definitely not new and it's not a ton of savings, but it does come in at a lower price point. And then you also see something peeking over here at us, and that's going to be for $2,000. That literally looks just like the C1 solution from FogHashing, but a generic China company name. Then, this thing, it's just really summing up the video for us here. We've got Gasparin, I guess getting buyer's remorse. He has a DCX mining solution at $6,500 or make an offer with free local pickup in Texas. I think people oftentimes really forget about eBay. eBay is, if for nothing else, a really interesting research tool. TLDR with this, bought it, never used it. As a sobering reminder, there's always a big risk when you buy secondhand, new but never used. It's unlikely that DCX would support you if you're having any issues with this. And I mean, why should they? Although new, right, bought but never used, from a warranty support standpoint, this is an absolutely used product and you're not even the original owner. And when you're spending that much money saying, hey, this doesn't work, and they send you another pump or something real quick, or the enclosure leaks, instead of you having to break out the welder, there's a lot of value in that. But on the other hand, if you're down the street in Texas, well, maybe this is for you. Here's another one that, just browsing eBay, I found One Stop Mining Gold Power. You kind of wonder, is this like a little ice cream, scoop vendor machine? Oh, no, sorry. We've dunked miners in here. And it doesn't look like the most efficient deployment. Kills me that one's sideways too. But look, I'm not the guy who's got peak wire management, so what shit can I really talk? But at a glance, I wonder, could we get more miners in here? Either way, it's interesting to look around and see what's going on. And maybe you can't fit more because they do clearly listed as 6 pieces of the Bitmain Antminer S19. And with there being some space in between the units, while you are losing density, for example, a container deployment where every inch matters, if you're just say throwing these in a shed or your garage or something, then that doesn't really matter, and you actually may appreciate having wiggle room between the units to be much easier to reach in there, take one out, and service it if you need to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, on to the next topic. It's going to be Easy Blockchain. They deploy major mining farms. I've talked to them over email before about touring one of their facilities. They've been building a big one in South Carolina, USA. And they don't have any small scale solutions, but they're very proud of boasting about immersion, right? And it's just like we saw on the other listing. 40% hash rate increase, 100% noise reduction for miners. Equipment lifespan increases up to 175%. You can operate in even hotter environments because you have a better cooling solution. Boasting 25 to 35% energy savings on cooling, and thus having the lowest long-term operational costs, as you have better equipment lifespan, lower cooling cost, energy savings. I mean, you pay more upfront and you save long-term and earn more with an immersion deployment. But at some point, the hassle and additional expense of immersion may not be worth it for everyone. But to round out Easy Blockchain, because this is going to immediately be interesting and applicable to you, or absolutely not. They have Smartbox mobile mining containers, right? Road legal, baby. We bring this thing anywhere. It's a mining container, and it's for immersion, and it's basically a plug-and-play solution, which this is a pretty cool video, by the way. I absolutely appreciate this. And when you're shooting something like this, you got to have everyone firing on all cylinders. So it's funny to see this, knowing like from a content creation, this is not an average day, most likely. This is like a very stressful day of like, get it done, look productive, nobody mess around, hopefully nothing goes wrong, type content shoot. Definitely cool to see this whole production as if we were quite literally a fly on the wall at the warehouse. Here's a picture of some of their stuff. And remember, if you have a big immersion deployment, you're going to have a very big dry cooler. Let's see if I can get a shot of that. So you can see that. Just like we looked at the other things, you're going to end up with probably a semi-truck worth of cooling for a semi-truck worth of an immersion mining farm. There's GRC as another option. I'm not super familiar with this one. GRC, they have this solution. At a glance, my concern with this is going to be basically an open top. I hope they have covers and things like that. Obviously, this is just a render. I struggled to find much information on this, but this reminds me of the immersion mining farm that we toured in 2019, actually also in South Carolina. And I thought it was so freaking cool and very advanced setup, especially for the time. Custom solution, stuff like that. But the takeaway, though, in retrospect, is that there were no lids on top. And so at that point, it's very easy for your oil to get dirty. And dust and other particles get in there. They stay in the oil. They can potentially clog it up. Ultimately, you'll have to drain the system, right? Kind of flush it out, and then add new oil eventually, or just hope that the gunk never gets bad enough to, shut the operation down. As we see more and more immersion mining solutions, we will see more and more random Chinese company rips of immersion mining solutions. So we can see something that seems more akin to the DCX, BiXBiT, FogHashing style solution here under the Lian Li brand. And in classic capacity for this, we can see that this one seems to come in at a bit of a lower price point. But what kind of support would you get? Who's used this and it's worked well? It's hard to say. At a glance, it's intriguing, right? But I just always worry about the documentation and language barrier with things like this. If you are super advanced and know what you're doing, solutions like this can, save you a lot of money. But on the other hand, if you're not those things, this could turn into an absolute nightmare. But Lian Li has many solutions for mining. Water-cooled systems, power supply, pioneered solutions. So definitely worth mentioning, something I'm going to dig deeper into. But if you got a website and you got custom solutions and you got a miner or crypto mining tab, that's cool. I like that. I respect that. As a reminder, I've never talked to them. I've never worked with them. It's not an endorsement, anything like that. I can't even tell you that this is definitely the official site. Whereas I can with, say, FogHashing, BiXBiT, and DCX, and so forth. But it's always cool to see videos and, behind the scenes, a little bit of stuff like that. And just all this, technical, electronic hardware. I nerd out big time. I think it's super freaking cool. So, wow. That was a lot of information to run through. I mean, really to round it out with more than just our 10 seconds of tales, who is our CIO at VoskCoin, if you didn't know. She's our Chief Immersion Mining Officer. She absolutely hates tubs of liquid. Her biggest nightmare is the ocean. Her mortal enemy is the bathtub. But she loves playing with the hose. But maybe it's because she quite literally attacks the water the entire time. So, while tails may be the mortal enemy to liquid, that's why she knows so much about it, and she was promoted to our CIO as well as our CLO, our Chief Liquid Officer. So, in all seriousness, to bring it back here to the actual video, immersion is really cool. On a small scale, it's interesting. I mean, you dunk your miner in this fluid. It's not fun to clean off. This fluid is just a tub of carcinogens. You try air-cooled mining, which is just typical mining where you have the fans and it's sitting on a shelf in your garage or something. Cool, simple, works. You don't like it, or you want to move on, or whatever. You throw it in a box and you sell it. It's not quite as simple to undunk your rig. There's special fluids you use to clean that fluid off. Absolutely can be done, but you need to take it out to either sell it, to move it a far distance, potentially cleanly, or perform maintenance or upgrades. It's not going to be quite as much fun. It's going to suck, comparatively. I'm really happy to see more and more immersion mining solutions come to market, especially considering the cryptocurrency market isn't all that great, but also it takes a while to actually bring a product to market. So things born in a bull run actually normally end up showing up in a bear market. But it's in that bear market is when it's time, my opinion, or at least what I'm doing personally, to grab that gear and build out something that could be very lucrative in the right cryptocurrency and Bitcoin market conditions. So most people that deploy immersion mining and immersion mining farms are mining Bitcoin. And that's my interest with it too, because that's a coin that I know that I will want to mine simply forever. And even when I have immersion miners that are dunked in this fluid and they're no longer profitable, I view it as 3 options. Slug through the misery of cleaning them and sell them for whatever they're worth, or use them for parts or whatever. Let them run forever, okay? Or toss them and replace them with something else. So one thing in particular is if you consider solar, right? You have this immersion gear and it needs X amount of electricity, then deploy a solar array that produces that. So now you have a more efficient and better long-term mining solution, and you're even bringing the power for it once you're able to break even on the miner cost, on the immersion hardware cost, on the solar array. You have essentially the most efficient mining deployment that is quite literally printing you money. It's the closest we can ever get to this money printing government that we've all got. Doesn't matter even what country. Your country's probably doing it. But the US, they've been especially naughty. And you're going to be bad too if you don't subscribe. So that's all I got today. Thanks for watching. I'm surprised how long this video was, but I sincerely appreciate you tuning in, especially if you're still watching it 40 minutes later. Wow. I guess there's no point in saying it, but by the way, my name is Vosk. If you haven't already, I really do hope you subscribe and stick around. We're chasing 1 million subscribers, and we're still pretty far away. I need your help, please.